Just going to give it a few minutes.
Hello.
Grab a cup of coffee, have make one last restroom run, and get ready for a very powerful hour. So we're excited that you're here, and we're just going to let a few more people sign on, and we'll probably get started right at around 10:02, I would say, just because we want to give everybody the opportunity to join us. Okay? I hope you're having a good Wednesday. And now you're just going to get to stare at us because we're live
We
and
could
there.
we could have some witty banter, Andrew. This is the
Yes,
this is the
we're
time where we're
having
supposed to be charming
we're
and
having
smart.
we're having witty banter right now. And we could talk about the weather. We could talk about, how crazy our world is right now. But I think I'll wait to talk about that when we're all together. And I would say it was the first time I put on a bow tie in a very long time, and it actually feels like going home.
I
Going,
know. It was the most exciting thing when we turned on the camera and I got to see you in a bow tie. It's been those of you that know
yes.
Andrew. It's been months since he's worn a bow tie, and it's been a little hard for him. Like every now and then, he mentions like that he feels a little like his bow ties are sad in the
I
closet.
know,
So this
yes,
is a
and I
very
and the,
exciting
and the big
occasion.
question for all of you on the joining us now is he wearing pants or is it just a shirt and a bow tie?
And do we
Uh,
really want to know? Is the other part of that question.
I just have to make sure I don't get up at any given point during the presentation, just in case.
Alice will
Okay.
be paying attention. She'll turn the camera off.
So it's just at 10 o'clock now. We're just going to give it a few more minutes, and we have a lot to cover today. So we're going to start, as promptly as possible. But we see everybody joining, so we just want to make sure that we give everybody the opportunity to get on board. And we hope you're all having a good day. And it is a nice way to start a Wednesday with all of you. So many of we saw all the registration folks, and so many our friends and clients and previous and past, and then industry folks. And in advance, we're saying thank you because we know these challenge times are making life extremely busy. So thanks for joining us. This is very interesting too, that you get to see into one of the things about Zoom that I think is so interesting is that you get to see into people's lives and homes.
This
And
is true.
and I apologize, I have a little glare. It's a sunny day in San Francisco, and I don't have the appropriate window covering. So
I know. If this goes on much longer, we're going to need green screens so
yes,
that we can
yes, yeah.
broadcast ourselves everywhere.
Yeah, I could probably switch the screen, but I like the natural light. So thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to get started in just about a minute. We're still seeing people joining us, so we don't want to get too far ahead. But I think we'll get started in 1 minute. Can I have a sip of coffee, pump up a little bit. Okay.
Yeah, those of you on East Coast, you hopefully have ordered some lunch from your favorite restaurant.
Yes, and you're doing takeout and delivery, which is very important right now. And I think it's time to get started. Are you ready, Candace?
Yeah, let's do it. Thanks
Okay.
everyone for joining us. We're so happy to be here with you virtually.
Yes, and I'm Andrew Freeman. For those of you who don't know me, and this is Candace McDonald. We're going to be taking about the next hour to take you through not only our updated trends, but the impact, obviously, of COVID-19 and everything that we've been seeing and how we're sort of, there's going to be a few words that you're going to hear a lot right now. You're probably hearing new normal, pivot, I think is the other word that we've heard. And there'll be a few more that resilience, I think, is another really big word that you'll hear a lot about. So as we go through the presentation, just so everybody's a little clear before I jump into who we are, every November we present an annual trend report. And can you believe that was only about 5 months ago that we were presenting, what we expected to be the biggest year ever in the world of restaurants and hospitality. And then, March 17th is probably a day that changed our lives when we went into shelter in place. So what we've done is we've taken the trends that we forecasted then, and then we've given them an update. I do want to say, not everything that you're going to see today is going to be like, oh my God, I can't believe I didn't think of that. We're definitely citing, concepts and movements that we've seen through this last 9 weeks. And also, I know some of you have already pivoted and you're one thing I always say is that crisis definitely leads to creativity. And while we're still dealing with what is a really, I'm just going to say it, effed up time in our world, we're a resilient industry. We're very supportive of each other, and we're doing our very best to get through. And sadly, while there will be casualties, we're hoping that all of you are working hard to pivot yourselves and to really give it your best shot. So hopefully today, what you're going to hear is, what we think and, will help and how we can help you. A little bit about us before we jump into the presentation. So 15 years ago, yes, it's our 15th anniversary in November, by the way. So hopefully we'll be able to celebrate in person again. I left Kimpton Hotels and Restaurants after a 10-year round there and decided to start an agency that focused on innovative lifestyle marketing and media relations. And part of that was that I sort of had worked with a lot of agencies, and I knew what I liked and what I didn't like about working with agencies. So that was 15 years ago, and AF&Co is really known for working with hotels, restaurants, products, anything in the lifestyle arena that really is about getting your message out there. Candace and I met 10 years ago, and there's a great story I can tell, but not for another day because we don't have time to go into that.
We got a lot to cover.
Yeah. But Candace and I met 10 years ago, and Candace joined AF&Co. And then about 5 years ago or 6 years ago, we really got into the idea that we needed a branding arm, and we needed a communications arm for AFCO because a lot of people were coming to us anyway. And so Candace took the reins on helping me set all that up, and it went extremely well. And so in January of this year, we launched Carbonate, which is Candace is in charge of. I'm just a mere player on the team, but I love it. And they are the branding and communications wing of AFCO. But basically, well, not AFCO, we're two companies, but the best thing is we're really a one-stop shop. And what we focus on is what we're passionate about, which is all things restaurant, hotel, travel, lifestyle, just anything that brings joy to people, even in the social distanced arena. So Candace, anything to add to that?
No, I think, one of the things that, those of you who know us and those of you who are getting to know us, we spend a lot of time understanding how people make decisions around what they're going to eat, what they're going to drink, where they're going to go, where they're going to travel, how those purchasing decisions are made. So that's really what our annual trend report is. And we've been spending the past few months learning a whole new world. And so, that's really what we're excited to share with you today is some of those thoughts about what the future might hold.
And I just want to say before we jump into this, if you were all here, we'd give you a big hug because the last couple months have been the most challenging, and yet with everything, there's been an inspiration that comes from all this. And I just say, hug yourselves right now, everybody, because nobody else can hug you right now. And just give yourselves a pat on the back and say, you're here, we're still here, and we're really hopeful that with all the aid packages that the government's putting together, our PPPs, everything that we're doing, we're going to do our very best to stay alive and thrive through this. So let's go into today's presentation. I've been saying that Candace and I are sort of like the Sonny and Cher of the industry right now. And again, if we had a little more time, we'd sing a bunch of songs for you. But I might sing a little bit, right, Candace, throughout this presentation.
Yeah, Andrew breaks out into song. It's what makes our webinars different.
And maybe there'll be a little playlist. One thing that we do know is that you have to keep your sense of humor, a little bit, and you have to sort of keep your chin up. I'm not saying that there hasn't been very grim days, covers pulled over your head days, but I think we're trying to focus on the future and stay as positive as possible. So our Yellow Brick Road, let me tell you, so our trend report was, we're not in Kansas anymore, primarily because the industry was already facing some challenges, labor, the environment, food supply. All this was actually happening prior to COVID, and then this happened. And so we're adjusting the path that we're taking on the Yellow Brick Road. So we're going to talk about reimagining the guest experience, sending your brand home, which is definitely bigger than ever. How you're going to greet your guests, both online and in person, and in the future. And then obviously Budgets have been really impacted by all this. So we're looking at how you can get the most for your money with the smallest possible budget. And then what are the long-term impacts on the hospitality trends that we cited early, in November. Throughout the presentation, everything sort of, trends and concepts meshing together. So we're not going to cover, we're not going through the whole trend presentation, but we pulled out the ones that we felt definitely had the most of the biggest pivot, if you will, through this. So that's what you're going to get today. We're going to spend about the next 45 or so minutes taking you through the report. I do want to let you know the Q&A function is on. So if you have questions, you can post the question, or you can also send it to our social handles, which is at AF&Co and at Carbonate Group. So, and we'll get to you one way or the other. And then we'll give you the other ways to get this presentation at the end of the presentation. So that's just sort of a little housekeeping. Let's dig in. Is everybody ready? Okay, so reimagining your guest experience. So the words recovery, reimagine, reemergence. This is crazy, isn't it, folks? That, just 9 weeks ago, none of these words were even around, or the new normal, or, okay, the biggest word, another big term, social distancing, right? Well, I mean, we only wanted a social distance from people we didn't like prior to this. So now we're having a social distance from people that we love. And, and that's been something very interesting. So, here's just, we're going to share a few stats with you. By the way, we're not going to go through everything on every slide. You will get a copy of this presentation if you so desire at the, in a follow-up email from us following this. But you can see here that there is a zest to get back out. This is, and dining with friends is one of the most missed aspects of this whole COVID impact. And then the other thing, obviously, is getting back and traveling. One thing that we don't, obviously know yet is how comfortable people will be to do both of these things that they miss so much. And we believe that that'll be a slow return based on safety and what people are personally feeling comfortable with. But the good news is, people really do miss it and they want to get back out. So, we have an opportunity there.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I
Go
think,
ahead, Candace.
yeah. And that's really, I think, what Andrew said, there's really most important, what we're going to focus on. There's lots of, lots of resources available to talk about, operationally how you're going to adjust. But really what our focus is today is really about communication, because safety, trust, and value are really going to be the most important values that your restaurant, hotel, even food products, for those of you who are in that industry, are on. Really, and communication is key to doing that. So, and really, in order to communicate those things well, we're at this point where we have to move out of this temporary survival mindset and into doing what, those of us in the hospitality industry know how to do the best, which is create guest experiences. So we have these circumstances. They're not awesome. Nobody's going to say that, but now we have to look past how bad is this going to get, and look forward to how good can we make this be. I heard that on another webinar. I stole that from somebody and I can't remember, but it was I liked it a lot, and I think it's true. And so in order to do that, your guests have to trust you, and that's going to mean different things in different markets. We work with clients all over the country and have had very different conversations from market to market, not just based on kind of where the economic and disease impact has been, but really in terms of how people are feeling. So, I know we have brands of all different sizes on here. So larger brands are really going to have to get local and really understand what's happening in each local market. And of course, independent restaurants in different markets too are really going to have to know what their guests are feeling, so that you can find ways to make them feel comfortable and come back to you. And really, that's leads us into this idea of show us, don't just tell us. It used to be that restaurant and hotel operators in particular used to spend lots of time making sure that guests didn't really know what was going on. You never saw the cleaning happening. You never really saw, all behind the scenes stuff. It was the theater, if you will, the theater of the restaurant or hotel experience. And in this new world, it's going to be quite the opposite, because I think we all experienced the onset of emails coming at us from, a variety of every brand we ever did business with, telling us how clean they were and how they're handling COVID-19. And so really now this is where it comes the time to really just be who you are and show people how you're doing the things you're doing that are going to keep us safe. And that's really where the trust will come from.
So along those lines, we the term cleanliness theater, I think, is something that's really going to be interesting, and that's also not just for your guests, but for your employees. They're going to want to have the peace of mind knowing that you've got their back as well. So put your money where your mouth is, basically, and do it and show people that you're doing it versus just telling them that you're doing it, because that's what we did when this first hit. Um, so it starts with prior to arrival. Obviously, how are you going to communicate with your guests now, both for the hotels and restaurants, differently than you did before? So many, let's face it, there was people love restaurants, right? Everybody, would you say yes? And people loved clamoring,
Mhm.
into crowded restaurants, bellying up to the bar, hanging out, right? This is going to be a little different now I would say for, good year to year and a half, obviously. Everything, one thing people keep asking me is like, how are we going to deal with this post-COVID? Well, post-COVID, as far as we're concerned, is really when we're all vaccinated and the world is back to normal. We're living in the COVID world right now. Obviously we're looking at the infection rates and how things are reducing and how the comfort level for people to come back, but we're still living in it and we're going to be living in it for a while. So how are you going to communicate changes and expectations to guests? Well, your website is, well, these five things are basically your number one, the ways you should do it. Reservation confirmations, social media, obviously, signage, staff talking points. We're going to get into a lot of tactical opportunities for each of these areas as we go through the presentation, but technology that obviously is going to reduce any sort of points of contact. Again, some of this makes me really sad that we're doing this, but we have to. And again, it's personal comfort level. And just looking at advanced purchasing and different ways that you can have the experience become a lot more seamless. Check in on your phones versus having to go and talk to somebody and having them give you a key. All these things are going to come up. So, and I would end with on this slide that guest training is going to be key. Because I'm sorry, staff training, because they're going to need to know how to communicate all this. So being with safety being top of mind, don't stand so close to me. Okay, first song of the presentation from the playlist. Put it in the Q&A, or just let me know if you know who sang that. That is the first song. Okay, so we're going to focus on how to communicate upon arrival. Obviously you have to redesign your whole arrival experience. What we know right now is there's no seats at the bar. So, where are people going to wait when they're waiting for their tables? Where they should go and and what the required behaviors are for your particular establishment. And then, looking at the space, we're going to talk a lot more about that to not make it feel, clinical or like a hospital, if you will, but make it feel, part of your brand experience, with how you're going to have to relay out the space. And, right now we're still not totally clear in every state, what the parameters are going to be. It's state by state. And it's very interesting because one thing about the impact of COVID has been how different this is regionally and by state and by the world too. And, just making sure that guests still feel welcome when they come in, and that it's almost the new world is part of how you're doing business.
Yep.
And then at the table, there's going to be a lot of parameters about what you're allowed to put down on the table. So that's the first thing. And what, again, limited points of touch, anything that would give the guests a sense of that somebody touched this prior to me, being here. And then really, as what we do is how we're going to communicate that out, right? Because that's the
And
most
have some
important
fun
thing.
too.
Right?
And
Say
have
that
some
again.
fun with it too.
Oh, and have, yeah,
And
and in your brand voice, right? That's what we've been talking
mhm.
about. Like it's okay to, again, it's a very serious topic, but you have to like you think about the fact that people are ready for a little relief when it comes to this. So, like this pen idea, if you touch me, you take me, like that's yours. Don't put it back down. The same thing with these wraps that you're seeing here. These are all the ways that you can really bring your brand to life in this new world. So, how are you going to communicate the precautions? How you communicate to the guests that everything's been sanitized. If you're going to do a menu, is it freshly printed? Is it a one-time use? Pretty much, I think that's going to be the way of the world, everybody. If you're not going to go for doing something on, on your phone, which I still don't know if I'm a big fan of, because I
Yeah.
think it'll definitely impact the experience. I think it's really done by concept. For instance, if you're fine dining, you still have to figure out how your experience is going to be communicated through with a fine dining edge. If you're a fast casual and people are used to using their phones, let them continue to use it. And then, looking at what you have to do legally to make the experience for your guests and staff feel on board. And then I do think looking at contactless payment. Finally, the closing moment. We always say, what's the last kiss? The last kiss, that's a bad concept right now, right? We can't kiss, we can't shake hands. But what's the last,
Can't kiss them anymore.
I saw, my friends at the Culinary Edge put out a presentation, and they're calling them untouch points. I thought that was kind of an interesting thing, but there's still how you bring your brand to life. So at the table. And then finally, for hotels in the room, I will say the hotel industry, I've been very impressed with how serious they're taking all this and the standards that they're putting in and the partnerships that they're looking at. And I will say this, based on what I'm seeing, I will feel very safe in a hotel if everybody abides by what they're putting out there. How are we going to let people know in advance at check-in and in the room? And again, within the brand voice. But to Candace's earlier point, we want to make sure that the staff is always a good example of this, whether masks are required or they're not required or whatever it is, that they're washing their hands a lot, that there's people will feel the confidence when they see it happening. And then finally, getting guest feedback, because just like, if I tell Candace that this is the place you should stay because it's the cleanest and it's the safest, that will be really helpful. And if Candace has stayed there, we should solicit that feedback. So, and that's both for hotels and restaurants. But, I hope, you understand that this is part of our new world. So we're going to embrace it within our brand voice.
Yeah. So I think, this next section is one that, Andrew mentioned sort of all the creativity we're seeing. And I think this is really one of the biggest shifts that we've seen. We're calling this sending your brand home. For a long time in our industry, restaurant delivery was, I don't know that I knew of too many restaurateurs who were super excited about restaurant delivery. And I think that's really, we've talked about, we really think that's because the concept of restaurant delivery is always going to fail, because as every restaurateur knows, you can't box up the experience of your restaurant and send it home. But that doesn't mean that it's wrong for people to want to have some of whatever your restaurant experience is in their home or in their office or wherever they are. Really, the opportunity is how a restaurant chooses to extend that brand experience. And what we're seeing now, I think, there was already in motion this delivery as a key revenue segment, but really now we're seeing restaurateurs take advantage of it because it's the only revenue stream available. But also guests, it was already something that people wanted. So it was really an opportunity for our industry to ask the right question. How can we do delivery is really the wrong question. The right question is, how can we make it possible for guests to experience what we offer at home? That doesn't mean they're going to replace completely over time dining in the restaurant. It's a different dining occasion. And so really reframing the question gives us a lot more opportunity to be creative, and within that to find ways to make money at it. And so that's really what we're seeing coming out. We're going to dig into some of the ways we've seen people do it.
Yeah, it's interesting. Prior to our trend report early on was, we very much acknowledged that delivery and takeout was part of the experience. And, but we were, I was on a major platform promoting dine in, as a way to, to make sure that, obviously the restaurant stayed alive and thrived prior to all this. And it's, if you call me crazy, because I never would have thought that I would be so focused on takeout and delivery as a business model. Obviously, advocacy groups are like here in San Francisco, the Golden Gate Restaurant Association fought for the 15% cap on delivery, and every other, city sort of followed suit. So we have to make delivery more economical and profitable for hotels. I'm going to say for hotels and restaurants, because I also feel like how you deliver your hotel experience at home during all this is going to be key as well. But let's focus on restaurants right now. So, prior to this, we knew it was this sort of, I'm going to call it a necessary evil, if you will, like, thank you, millennials and you young folks who like to sit on your couch and, just order in. And, but the restaurants weren't crazy about it, primarily because it was costing a lot of money and it wasn't portraying their brand in the best light. So how do you give them what they want and give them what they need at the same time, but then also remember that the value proposition that Candace mentioned earlier of how those items get delivered is part of your experience. I know there's some uncontrollables if you're dealing with third-party delivery sources, but once it gets there, it's got to present your brand. And this revenue stream is this is not going to go away. When even this is now part of the new normal or the new world. So if you're going to send it home in the right way and make sure that the quality is there as well. So let's talk about it a little bit. The creative opportunity, right? So everybody write this down. Crisis breeds creativity. Crisis breeds creativity. How you're going to do it is going to be part of it. And, and some of this you might say, well, that's expensive, or that looks too hard for us to get together. But imagine, this is a client of ours here in San Francisco. Imagine if you get a delivery that looks like that, the brand is coming through in the way they're portraying this. And then now, because we can deliver wine and we can deliver a variety of different experiences, you want to fulfill the desire of the guests, and that doesn't mean like I'm going to eat it out of the box. Like, even putting thoughtful instructions in, putting a fun postcard in. Like, this is another meal period now, everybody. And so the way you would have treated them in the restaurant, you want to treat them, at home. So reimagine your experience. If you're not, I'm sure a lot of you are doing this already, and it's a creative opportunity. And while it may not be as profitable, there's ways that you can make money, but it's also a great brand extension, right? So, you see, we have some nice quotes put in here as well. But in general, just challenge your creativity here, and remember that when that food gets delivered, it is your brand that is being delivered.
So we're going to go through, we've kind of, in seeing what people have been doing, we've kind of broken these down into a couple different concepts and ways that people are tackling this and finding ways to differentiate and provide different experiences. So the first one here is similar to what was happening in the past. We're calling it inspired by. But this is taking, we've seen restaurants taking this quite a bit further and creating a delivery or carryout menu that's inspired by the restaurant concept, but more curated to withstand travel. It's a different experience. We've got, Lazy Bear in San Francisco has their camp commissary offering, which is so creative. Saison has the smokehouse. You can see the branding here from Underdog on the way that the cocktails are being presented. But the idea here is to name it so that it's clear that this is a taste of your restaurant. It's not the restaurant experience. Again, like Andrew said, don't forget the drinks. And really, it's an opportunity to continue presentations or containers that can enhance. It's also an opportunity to look for partnerships with purveyors and vendors to create something unique so that you're taking what's successful in the essence of your restaurant and giving it to people in a different way, a slightly different way.
Yeah, just on that note, Candace, I think that the liquor companies, the wineries, they're all, all your purveyors are in the same boat. So looking at ways that you can partner up and present them as well is a really big opportunity. Yeah. So inspired by, and I'm just going to say, I'm inspired by you, Candace.
Oh, thanks, Andrew.
You're welcome. Okay.
See, concept number 2, I think this is really cool. It's the LTO, which is not really a new idea, but for delivery, the idea of kind of reinventing the pop-up. So offering something, that seems like it's going to be a limited time, it creates some urgency. It also allows you to try something new without making a long-term commitment. So looking at things that are, totally different from your regular offering, maybe it is only available a few days a week. It can be a way to test a new ideas, longer term viability. We have a couple of examples here. Mina Family Test Kitchen is using it as a way to highlight their different chefs. Looking into, Wayfair Tavern has a fried chicken truck, which is, an extension of their brand. We're seeing really interesting collaborations happening. The one caveat with this one is really to make sure that you give something enough time to have a chance to succeed. And that's especially true when you do have a limited marketing budget, which we know everybody has right now. So really making sure that you are thoughtful in how you're using that limited marketing budget, but also that you give something like this enough time to see if it can get traction before you say, we tried it for a weekend and it didn't work. Because things will take longer to build traction when you have less marketing dollars to put behind them.
Right. And I would say that the shift here, obviously, is just the way you would promote these specials in your restaurants, your promotions in your restaurants. Where it's a pivot, right? So, ding, 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 ding. There's the word. It's a pivot because you're pivoting these experiences that you're doing and bringing them to the public, and they're still interested in your restaurants and you, but they're just interested in a new way now. Yesterday, I was talking in my office. If everybody's familiar with the famous Zuni Cafe in San Francisco, they put on that their famous roast chicken for two is now available for takeout. And they go on sale at 9 p.m. the night before, and there's only, I think, 25 orders, and you can't even get close to it. You're literally, there's people clamoring at the phones right now, at their phones and their emails to get part of that. So if you create that demand with your favorite items or something, that's another opportunity. And that leads us to this, the family style meals and experiences. Out of all of this last 9 weeks, this has been, I think, one of the most amazing things. And by the way, family doesn't mean, just the kids and the mom and the dad, right? Because there's all these kind of families. There's people that are sheltered in place together. There's moms and dads of older children. There's other things. Candace is a different situation. She's got 5 kids at home. So, that's why I'm really
So
inspired by
tired
her.
of cooking.
Even like right now, I'm amazed that there isn't a little head in that vision, because usually there's a little head popping in with Candace screaming like, "Why are you crying?" It's usually something like somebody stole something from somebody else or whatever. Anyway, I diverse. I go off topic because I love seeing all Candace's kids. But for this, it is about family, but it is also about your extended families and your party packs. And I will say very soon, social distancing outings are going to become very popular. We're going to be able to get together in backyards. We're going to be able to get together, in parks and things. And if you can do these family style experiences in kits, and don't have a lot of them, just, change them seasonally, change them with the holidays. But just, again, this is another opportunity for you to tell your story.
I think the other thing, Andrew, that's cool is, how you incorporate a little bit more of an experience into it. We've seen a couple of these Zoom dinner parties, these dinner series, where there's, maybe a little video from the chef that comes that, or maybe it's the option where, Andrew and I aren't social distancing together, but I can order this package with my group and he can order with his, and we're still able to have this Zoom experience together. So
yeah,
we're seeing some of those pop up, and that's
I think
cool
that's
too.
really cool, by the way. I think, even, what's really great about that, even giving them the opportunity for your chef to come on for the first 5 minutes to tell them about the meal and to explain the experience. So selling it as a dinner party on Zoom is a really creative idea. I'm trying one Friday night. Oh, and one next Friday that some of you you may know about. You may join us, if you will, a paella party.
Speaking of, that was good timing. That's what's next, the meal kits.
Okay.
So,
Go ahead, Candace.
sure.
Is it me?
Yeah, well, either one. You want to
Okay,
go ahead?
go ahead. No, go ahead. Go ahead.
So this is slightly different than the family meals and group experiences. Meal kits. I think we've all seen these come up over the past couple of years. HelloFresh and Blue Apron, and restaurants. I think rightly so. You may not want to send home your signature dish with some reheating instructions, because what if they don't make it right, and then suddenly they're having your famous dish and it's mediocre. But that doesn't mean you can't provide some new items that can be made at home, or something slightly different. Opportunities I think we've seen, and we all know that there are some major issues with, our purveyors. So how can we bring them into this, and offer, cuts of meat and seafood and things that, restaurants have access to that individuals don't, even once the grocery stores are filled again. And so looking at, we've seen some really interesting ones. The paella kit that Andrew mentioned from Canella's is really cool. Delfina is doing their pizza kits, but also, a toss your own pasta kit. Even taking the meat and taking it one step further and brining it. Nopa's doing that with pork chops, or looking at a whole feast that you just make and have this experience. So these can be really interesting. And again, all of these we see continuing. I mean, we're using examples of creativity that's come up over the past couple of weeks, but we really see these being revenue opportunities for the long haul, or at least until, our traffic is back up to where we want it to be. But these opportunities aren't going to go away. And some of it's exciting. So we've seen a lot of creativity come. So.
For me, it's like all of a sudden I get one of these and I'm like, I can cook. Look how easy this is. I can cook. Which so it's given me a newfound love of cooking.
Andrew even knows how to make an omelet now.
I do.
Suddenly
I
Andrew's
do.
taking pictures of food that he's made himself. It's so weird.
Yeah.
But somebody just brought up a really good point about, party packs for couples and meal kits for couples. And that's a really good point too. We probably need to rename family meals because it really isn't necessarily just about groups of 4. Sometimes you do want just a meal for 2, and that's, a great thing too. So, and there's opportunities to build in, that experience too for smaller groups. So thank you for that one. This one is, we think, another opportunity. One of the things that we know is that, when we're reopening and we've got these really low capacity numbers, either because we can't, regulations don't allow us to seat more people, or just because people aren't coming in as frequently, we know we're going to need to find as many additional revenue sources as possible. So that's one of the reasons why we think all of these are going to continue. But we also think there's an opportunity, once you have them in your restaurant, to figure out some additional to-go items or staples or tomorrow's meal that you can also sell to them when they're there in your restaurant the day before. So, if I'm sitting in your restaurant and I've just had dinner, maybe you can bring me a menu of a couple of things that I can purchase that will be tomorrow's dinner. Or maybe there's, a rotating soup series that makes, that I can take home and have for my tomorrow work from home lunch. Maybe it's a basket of pastries, again, whatever it is that fits your brand, and is a way to kind of extend that dining experience and capture another meal while they're already sitting there in your restaurant. Another way to think about this would be, in your kitchen, you have a lot of high quality ingredients and stocks and sauces and things that I don't have, in my kitchen at least. And so maybe it's making, some of those things available to your fans, so that they can purchase, some things. Maybe it comes with a recipe that you provide, or maybe it doesn't. Maybe it's just some of those kitchen staples that they can have on hand. So again, looking for, once you have them, how can you sell them something else too?
And I would say also, we were talking about this with a client yesterday, having like a dessert of the week that's available in the whole dessert, or, by the slice or whatever it is. I think, I think a lot of people are going to want to grab and go, even when they're comfortable enough coming back in.
Yep. All right. So I'll keep going. So greeting your guests online. So another, kind of coming from this, this delivery world, but and it aligns really well with this, but is this a concept we're calling greeting your guests online. This is a really important shift that was already in motion and is really just accelerated even more so. But, your website and social media channels, they're not just your most important marketing tool. They're the first point of contact with your guests. As we live even more in our digital world, which is, again, this is not a new thing. This is not necessarily COVID related, but it has become accelerated even more so with this. How people have those online reactions with you are going to shape how they feel about you. And this is a really big shift for restaurants, because we are so focused on our, the experience we're providing in the restaurant. So to think about the fact that, it's not that I'm going out there and reaching out to people and bringing them into my restaurant. We're actually engaging with them where they are. And that's what's really happening online. We read a really interesting article from Bain and Company. It wasn't specific to restaurants, but it was really identifying the fact that one of the things that's happening is our digital future is accelerating. So it used to be movement patterns really changed. It used to be the restaurant stayed where it was, and the people, we sent out marketing and people came to us. And now really our restaurants and hotels have to reach out to people and engage with them, have those first points of contact online, which is a really big shift in thinking. Let's see, I can do this one website.
Sure.
Yeah, and I think the other piece of this, as we're engaging with them online, is also using that as a way to, it's not just about greeting them. It's also about how are you gathering feedback about them? How are you getting to know them? How are you offering loyalty, and engaging with them after the experience, which is all happening online. And your website is a really important point of contact for that. And so some things to think about, as you're exploring new ways to, improve your online presence, you're looking at ADA compliance is a really important issue. It was certainly one before this and is going to continue to be one too. So if you're redoing your website or rethinking about your online experience, don't forget to think about that. And it's not just a one-time thing. It's not just, oh, the site is built to be ADA compliant. You have to make sure that however you're updating your site, that process is happening. that could be a whole nother topic. But again, thinking about, how all of the ways that people are interacting with your website. So, is the reservation process really clear? Is delivery integrated into your site, or are you just clicking them out to some third-party vendor, or are you still controlling that experience? Even if you're going to have some third-party deliver it, does it still connect back to your brand? Catering, how can guests order catering if they do want to? How do they sign up for emails? Is your email sign up integrated into your reservation platform so that you have some kind of indication about how that all extends together? We know there's lots of different sizes of brands and, single locations and, many locations on this call. So this is obviously going to be different for different size companies. But again, really thinking about that guest experience and how are we interacting with them. Social media is the same thing. Does your Instagram feed reflect the same care that you put into your restaurant design? Is everything updated? Is it easy to find? Are you using stories effectively? As we talk about kind of ways to get the most bang out of your marketing dollar, social media, can certainly be one of those effective channels. But again, how are you doing that is really something to think about. And like I said, we could have a whole session on that. But as you're thinking about that strategy, really starting from the point of view of remembering that this is the first point of contact with your guests. This is just as important as the host standing at the door.
Candace told me that we need to learn how to do TikTok. Is that right, Candace? Is it, or
well, yes.
Okay.
So if you haven't mastered Instagram, don't worry, because TikTok's coming.
Okay, and I figured I thought I just had to learn how to dance for that one, and I had that down.
Chipotle is teaching you how to order their burritos on TikTok. So.
All right, I guess we're gonna have to learn how to do TikTok. So that'll be our next webinar, the art of mastering TikTok. I'm old, everybody. I don't even know what the hell is going on half the time with all these social media. So I have this beautiful young team around me. Anyway, but I'm going to get to talk about, the context of the context, and that is, what is the new world going to look like? Because you're going to have to reflect this in the way you're marketing. This is our favorite example, the Inn at Little Washington with those mannequins that are going to fill in the space, to give the social distancing. I mean, you really have to think about, this is really interesting. You have to think about how your brand experience comes alive with the new world, the new normal. So, how can you convey this image? I used to be a crazy person about never showing an empty dining room, gotta have life, gotta be crowded, gotta be full of people.
It's true. God help the coordinator that sent Andrew an email blast for approval that had an empty dining room in it.
I would always be like, who wants to go to an empty dining room? And now the dialogue has changed a lot. There's, a sense of, I wouldn't say empty is still the way to go, but I would say, just showcasing the social distancing and looking at all that, looking at possibility, like if our servers do need to wear masks and gloves, we have to show photos of that. It's going to give the customer, again, the guest confidence, right? But how do you, again, I think the most important thing that I'm conveying to everybody right now, like I'm crazy Eddie, is that your brand has to come through in all this, because otherwise it's going to feel inauthentic, and it's also it's not going to be a place that people want to go because it looks pretty dull or, uninteresting. But, even outside, what are you doing different? Because you're doing takeout and delivery now. So how are you conveying the messaging on the outside of your building to let people know everything that you're doing, right? And then, how are you being a good neighbor? And that comes through with the partnerships that you're doing, the people around you. How are you going to show that through the photography of your branded partnerships, everything? So it is a shift in mindset, because the way we used to think is much different now. I mean, I still think at the heart of it, great food is great food, and great service is great service. It's just going to be a matter of how you convey those messages.
Yeah, I think the other piece, and I'm just looking at a question that came in, is, this is really going to be very, very specific to where you are. We had a question come in about, in some markets where guests are not really, they don't understand the masks maybe, or they're questioning, why are your staff wearing masks and things. And, that's going to be a market to market issue to deal with. But I think at the heart of it, this is what we started with, is that we do have to remember it's time to shift away from this temporary mindset and really think about how within these circumstances, we're still going to make people have a great time. Because all the safety in the world, it's valid to ask, like, if I have to present my restaurant as if it's a hospital, why would anyone want to come eat here? What is really driving it? So really thinking about how within the context of all the safety, but how are we still going to make people have fun and enjoy what they're doing? Because that's really what people are craving.
Yes, indeed. And we're gonna pick up the pace just a little bit, because Candace and I are enjoying chatting with each other as much as we're enjoying chatting with you. But we want to make sure we're sensitive to time. So obviously, and this has probably impacted our world as much as it's impacted yours. People are looking for how to come back to life or bring new life into their hotels and restaurants, and they're looking at the marketing budgets, of course. So we've already addressed some of this, and you can visit our website with our recovery packaging and some of the ways that we're really trying to help everybody stay alive. But there is a reopening opportunity, right? And you have to invest in that, because once you come back on, or even if you're on right now, there's going to be a lot of clutter. Everybody's going to be coming back on. Everybody's going to be doing takeout and delivery, and so how are you going to stand out from the crowd? It goes back to everything that this agency is based on. How are you going to have your moment in the spotlight and really make sure that people know that you're there? So, how are you going to stand out, and then in these circumstances, there's going to be a lot of new processes and setting guest expectations, but the opportunity is, especially if you're not completely open right now, is plan now. Because when people start to come back on the market, whether they're coming back on for takeout and delivery or curbside or whatever it is, and eventually in restaurant dining, there's going to be opportunities along the way.
Mm-hmm. I think the thing to remember is, just because you're open doesn't mean they'll come, because there is going to be a lot of you're not the only one. Hopefully. I think we'll skip ahead a little bit. We talked a lot about the online presence. Again, we have some checklists on our resource center, which we'll email out, but, really looking through how are you taking advantage of making sure that everything's updated, looking at those platforms. Email is another one that I think is a really important channel, but a really easy one to abuse. And I think we've all, like I said at the beginning, we've all got so many emails from brands that we don't even remember caring about. So really take advantage of email as an opportunity, make your emails fun and visual and engaging. The other opportunity is really, you have an email database, but not all of those people you have the same kind of relationship with. So really segmenting your list, who ordered delivery, and maybe they get a different message, looking at how, your guests who dined with you multiple times over the past, prior to you closing, those frequent guests, looking at recency and frequency. And, if you use a system like Venga or something that ties it to spend, really taking advantage of those tools. Excuse me, so that you can make sure that you treat this channel as valuable as it really is.
The one thing really quick on this too is that, you already have the trust with a lot of your loyalists and your guests and your enthusiasts. So telling them everything you're doing is okay, but showing them and then letting them tell your stories, I think, is really what you want to, the ultimate achievement here, which will lead to I'll let Candace take this next slide. But I think in general, giving them a checklist of everything you're doing, everybody's going to be doing that, and they did that. Now it's time to put your money where your mouth is and show them what you're doing.
Put your mask where your mouth is.
Yeah, your mask where your mouth is.
But and that's where social media, I think, comes in. I think that there's different tactics on social media, obviously, but the most important thing, as we look at sort of not just restaurants, but across how people are engaging with all different types of companies, is really finding ways to be human. And that's really the opportunity for restaurants and travel brands, because we look to restaurants and travel brands for connection. And that's really where it is. Don't be afraid to be playful. Like I said before, you are a fun brand, right? And so, or an enjoyable experience, or, fun may not be your word, but there's a reason that people get enjoyment out of being in your restaurant. And they should have some enjoyment of engaging with you on social media. Don't be afraid to give a little behind the scenes look at what it takes to reopen a restaurant or hotel. if you're doing all of the right things, don't be afraid to show people that. Create a highlight button that is, specifically showing any new changes and, how building some anticipation. And you can do that in a way that is, again, to Andrew's point, in your own personality. The other thing here, I think, is just a tactical one along the lines of, how to get the most bang for your buck. If you've worked with influencers in the past, see if you can call in a favor and see if you can provide them with content, see if you can engage them to come back in. It's a different world right now. And I think, looking for ways to create some mutual benefit with influencers is an opportunity.
Yeah, I've been really impressed with the proper and the standard hotels. If you sign up for them, because they're great, but just the way they've kept their brands alive via email and bringing their brands into people's homes. There's been a sense that the brand has never been challenged through all this, and I think that's really, really important. And then obviously, the public relations, or letting the world know via the media world has really changed through all this as well. Unfortunately, with ad revenues down, a lot of, they've had to shrink their staffs, but there's still people out there that want to tell your story, and you want to be part of roundups, and you want to, look at other opportunities, again, to what's your unique positioning to bring your messaging to the world. And then inside, and there's going to be a lot of standards that you're going to have to deal with, like, the rules and regs, if you will. But again, how are you going to tell people in your tone, can you skip back one? Sorry about that. In your tone and in your voice, Candace is rushing me. Okay, in your tone and your voice, but use the sidewalk, even use delivery, anything that you can do to tell people about, what you're doing. And again, build loyalists, because the loyalists will then tell your story. And I think that's the most important thing. Okay, and then on to partnerships. We talked a little bit about this. Walk outside your restaurant, go to the right, go to the left, go around the block. Those are your neighbors and your friends and your people. Work with your travel bureaus, your chambers. Everybody is in the same boat as you. So, and they're all rooting for you. By the way, that's the one thing. Everybody's rooting for you. Can I get an amen? People want you to come back, and they want you to be successful. So, don't forget to update your phone messaging. Don't forget to look at everything, do the checklist. But the local love that you can generate from the public, let your guests tell your story. They're going to be the ones who, they're rooting for you. They want to come back. And so just make sure that you're communicating in a way that's authentic. Okay.
I would also add, I would also just add one thing. I think, even especially, there's been a lot of messaging out there about, support local, shop local. And, that's really important. I think one of the things, we know there's some larger brands on the call today. And I think that's, there's some challenges to overcome in some respects. And so it's going to be really important to generate those local partnerships as well, especially for bigger brands, and highlight the fact that you have local people that are working there too. And so that everybody is really, activating how you're a member of your community is going to be really important for larger restaurant brands. And as Andrew mentioned, for hotels too.
Yeah. So we're going to wrap up. We're going to take you through just some of the trends that we, again, this is like, we're certainly not in Kansas anymore. And I'm looking at Candace as Dorothy, and I'm Glinda the Good Witch for this next section, because don't you think I would be a great Glinda? All these thoughts have been going through my head. I've been thinking about that song, I Can't Feel My Face When I'm With You. And I'm thinking, like, I can't see my face when I'm with you, but I like it, because this whole mask thing is really interesting. I've got this whole concept going. But anyway, disruption leads. I'm taking your slide, Candace. Sorry about that. Go ahead. You could take this one.
All right. Well, Andrew,
I went off on a
Andrew
tangent.
loves the storyline.
Yes, I do. Yeah.
Next time we'll be in costume. Don't worry.
Yes.
And you all can be too. So disruption leads to acceleration. When, as Andrew mentioned, the trend report that we do every year is a really big labor of love for our agency. It takes us months to do, and we really we talk to many of you, and it's a big project. So in April, we looked back at it, and we were thinking that we were going to look at a whole bunch of things that we're just going to throw out the door. And actually, what we saw is really that a lot of the trends and things that were already in motion were just accelerating. And there's been a lot of talk about this being a disruption. And when we look at past disruptions over the past 20 years or so, what really happens is that those disruptions accelerate things that are already in motion. And there can be some comfort in that, because we're not going to go back to before, but we can get a sense of what the future might hold by looking at what was already taking hold. So that's kind of what we're aiming to do here. So Andrew, I kick it off with restaurants.
Yeah, and we're gonna speed this up. And by the way, we'll make sure that you all have a copy of this. We're gonna run a few minutes over, but I think we did build in a little extra time. But anyway, as I said a little earlier, if I would have ever said this prior to COVID-19 happening, you would have. This is just a shocker to me, but it's the reality. Curbside is the concept trend of the year. And that is a revised trend for sure. This is a wonderful picture of Mel's Drive-In, which are reintroducing the car hop concept. And a lot of the cities are working together to make the white zones in front of your restaurants where people can just pull up and take. So carry out and curbside is definitely these new concepts, and everybody, again, not just for now, forever. At least for the foreseeable future, this should be built into your model. Cloud kitchens and shared spaces. We talked about cloud kitchens a lot, and they've had their place. I think the interesting pivot here, if you will, is that some concepts are going to go away, and they're not going to go back into brick and mortar. And there's other restaurants that have opportunities in their dining room or in their kitchens to perhaps partner up and rent spaces in their own kitchens, if you will, for people to be able to keep their brand alive, but work in a more effective fashion. So these shared spaces can become commissaries. I'm talking about restaurant spaces, everybody. And I would say that these shared, I'm just getting a little pop-up here, sorry. Okay. Anyway, apologies, I got distracted for 1 second. These shared spaces continued, they're commissaries for delivery, but they're also great for curbside pickup. And other third-party operators can pick up from your restaurants, regardless of what the brand is. So I think software will be important to handle, but I also feel that, consider your restaurant a cloud kitchen if you have room and you're not going to be as busy as normal. Okay. Multi-concepts for multiple revenue streams. Again, this is a trend that we had talked about prior. I believe if you're paying rent and you have an opportunity, what are you doing in that opportunity, right? So whether you're going to have a little retail area or a floral area or box lunches or catering or even partnering with other people to take pieces of your space. The market that Candace referenced earlier. Just how are you going to use your space to maximize, especially if everybody can't come in? What can you be doing in your space that'll give you the best opportunity to get as most revenue as possible? So, look at new business models, but I'm telling you, everybody, there's opportunities in your space right now that you're not even thinking about where you can make money. And that's what we're trying to convey here.
This one is a little bit more, as we start to think about kind of longer term impact and what's this really going to look like in the future in terms of restaurant design. So I think some of this remains to be seen, but a couple of interesting things, obviously we're talking about more space between tables and barriers. Bar layouts are really, interesting right now. We're talking to a number of developers and projects that are in motion that are really thinking like, what do I do about that big U-shaped bar I was going to put, do I have to spread the seats out? Does it go away? So we're anticipating that bar layouts, at least in the short term, change a bit. This is this is Creator in San Francisco has this window design that they're doing that's basically all sealed. So meals can move through a sealed and self-sanitizing transfer chamber. So whether or not we'll have that level everywhere, or whether or not it'll just be a situation where we're anticipating and thinking about curbside when we're designing restaurants and even hotels, how you're getting the food into how room service works, those kinds of things. So thinking through those, obviously looking at touchless hand sanitizing stations, and that's another thing, even after COVID-19, is that such a bad thing to have touchless hand sanitizing at the entrance to a restaurant? You know, some of these things will likely stick around because they're good, even without a pandemic around. You know, more hand washing stations for both staff and guests, really looking at kitchen design and making sure that it's meant to accommodate carry out and delivery and purpose built for that, as opposed to just shoving, you know, delivery onto the same line. So these are some of the things we think are going to have some long-term impact, at least so far. This is another one that is location. This remains to be seen quite a bit, but we are anticipating that you know, that larger restaurant groups or even independent restaurants, there's going to be a shift in terms of real estate strategy. It remains to be seen what's going to happen in a lot of cities related to office buildings and office workers. This is really going to be region by region specific. I know from personal experience, there are some people that work really well from home, and there are others that cannot wait until their office reopens. Andrew being one of those that can't wait for the office to reopen. And so but realistically, as it relates to real estate strategy, there's an open question. We've quoted another writer here, but there's an open question as to whether or not people are going to go back to the workplace in the same fashion. And that's going to change, you know, the types of the rent in different locations. So that's one to watch.
And I'll also say that a lot of that depends on the return of convention business as well, and when people will feel comfortable to travel, and you know, and that's it. And then you know, we are going to run just a few minutes over, so hopefully you'll be able to stick with us. But taking better care of the essential workers. You know, this has been you know, the people that work for you, you know, are very, very important to the success of what this whole new world is going to look like. So making sure that, you know, everything that you need to do to keep your employees healthy, happy, safe, etc. And, you know, we've seen this has been a big buzz as part of the industry, but we have to acknowledge the fact that there's a lot of anxiety, there's stress, there's concern for families, everything. So the more you take care of your guests, your employees, and you all take care of each other, the higher the likelihood that you'll have, you know, more success coming back through this as well.
Yeah.
Okay, and on to hotels. We're gonna get moving. And again, I apologize. We have so much to cover, and we just want to make sure you know it all. We want you to know it all. Okay, so yeah. Okay, so the return of the
probably run about 10 minutes over for those of you who are planning.
Yeah. So the return of the staycation. I think everybody has seen this. If you haven't, you know, this is very important, because people are going to feel a lot more comfortable getting into their cars and going someplace where they can control the experience, and being outside and being with nature and hiking and knowing about whether or not they could avoid an elevator or how they can get to their room or anything is going to be really key. So cities have the opportunity to create staycation packaging. Your hotels have an opportunity to create staycation packaging, and really promoting what, you know, how much fun you can have outside, how you can drive there, you know, what you can do is going to be key. And we're really predicting that this is going to be, because let's face it, everybody, we all want to get out, right? And we all want to go on vacation again. It's just going to be a safe, they're going to feel more safe going somewhere in their cars.
This one is an interesting one, you know, and I think most of you in food service and hotels are already thinking through what to do, how to handle all those self-service opportunities. But we are going to say goodbye to the buffet and the salad bar, and probably the lobby coffee for quite some time. So looking at, you know, how that applies to meeting breaks, taking a more individualized approach with pre-ordered meals or boxed options, looking at events and catering departments having to reevaluate service style. Again, you know, it's all about how can we still create that experience, but yet at the same time, people won't be touching their food the same way.
Which I guess could be a good thing. Okay.
I mean, again, some of these things we're anticipating are going to have momentum because they're okay. I mean, salad bars, everybody in food service knows they're not the cleanest of things, you know, so it's not a bad thing to have it see that shift a little bit. Let's meet virtually. So we all know that Zoom meetings are the new thing we're all doing. But we're anticipating that even in the long term, that this idea, that people will become more comfortable with meeting virtually. We're not anticipating that in-person meetings are going to go away. I think we all, just like we're craving going back to restaurants, I know that we're looking forward to having in-person meetings with our clients, and, conventions are an important way to connect with people. So it's not that they'll go away, but looking at how, adding of virtual components, or adding an virtual attendance option. We also think for hotel brands that are trying to attract meetings business, you may get half the group in person, but needing to really look at what your meeting room capabilities are in terms of making it possible for people to join virtually. I think this is also a great example here. Hotel brands are staying top of mind by providing virtual work from home backgrounds. So not quite exactly what we're talking about with adding virtual components, but another way to really make people feel like they're there with you. These are fun.
Okay, and then on to some food and drink, which is one of the most interesting things about this category is that we're hearing about the superfoods and the healthiness, and then we're also hearing about the carb comeback. So click through, if you will. Have you ever seen any more? Well, first of all, the baking of the bread and the bread pictures and the shortage of flour. Like all of a sudden, I was like, why is everybody baking bread, right? What's in it with bread that that you can that's so, I don't know, it just feels good, right? And I think it's interesting. I think some of the fad diets, we've been calling it the COVID-19, the weight that we're going to put on a little bit, but and everybody's okay with the weight that people are going to put on. Well, not everybody's okay, but I think I'm a little okay with it. But I think that bread, pizza, pastas, these are all things that are. And why is this? Because it feels good, and we're locked in, and we're scared, and there's just a sense of comfort that comes from this. But then as we move forward to the next slide, if you will, we look at all comfort food across cultures is also really important. So we're also, with these new delivery experiences and these new experiences, we're also, we had predicted cross-cultural cuisine was the new cuisine, and with these opportunities for pop-ups and different things that the chefs are doing now, this whole idea of authentic cuisine is losing, has lost its traditional meaning, and it's becoming what is familiar to the chefs and what the flavors of the chefs are. So, even high-end restaurants, I love this, high-end restaurants that were never able to do certain things from their heritage or from their family cooking are getting to do it now. And one of the fun things about what's coming out of all this is we're getting to really see inside the lives of chefs and restaurateurs with things that they've always wanted to do. So it's this cross-comfort culture. And then this is the flip side, superfoods, taking care of ourselves. Wellness is definitely on the impact, because we all know that the world's a little bit of a scary place right now. And we want to stay well and come through this. And part of that is taking care of yourself and the foods that you eat to build immunity. And so you've got carbs and you've got wellness, but everything, honestly, is just fortifying your souls here and making sure that you stay as healthy and stress-free as possible through your love of food.
This one is Andrew's least favorite trend ever.
Oh my God, everybody. Can you believe that we can't share anymore? You could share with the people that you're sheltered in place with, but even that might be a little gross right now. I really don't know. But, this whole concept of, I used to love to just dig into other people's plates. Not everybody that I was with loved that I was doing it, but I would never order my own thing. I would always be like, what are we ordering for the table, right?
And then Andrew just orders a fork.
Yes, and everybody share. I carry a fork. I do believe this one will take a little while to come back. So it's going to be really creative to do samplings of like little things that you can try. So your own miniature version of a tapas, your own miniature version of dips and things like that. But honestly, for now, what you get is yours. And, and we're going to put those parameters around it. So I think this will morph, again, comfort level, we'll come back to this, but it's going to be a while. And then I'm just going to, I think we're wrapping up. Yeah, we're wrapping up.
This is the last one.
Yeah, we're wrapping up. So, just one thing that we also saw is cans continue to do their can do thing. Again, why? Well, you can buy these, they're convenient, they're easy. And we can pack our pantries. I was also cracking up with how many things people were going crazy with buying everything in cans again, things that we hadn't eaten before, in a very long time. And so you think about how cool canned cocktails are. Number one, you can get them, you can have them delivered. They're individually portioned. You can wipe them down. There's a lot of creativity in cans right now. They fit a lot of the new normal parameters. And I think even when restaurants start to open again, you'll see a bigger increase in higher level quality alcohol in cans. So that is just a prediction. We made that early in our report, but we do think this is going to stick. Okay. So again, apologies for going a little over. We had so much to tell you today, and we have so much more we want to tell you. And you can reach out to us. I know there's some questions here, but I just want to say before I turn this over to Candace to talk about how you can reach out to us and some of the things that we're working on, we just want to say I want to give you a round of applause, for your resilience and your drive through all this. It's I have to say that it's just been inspiring, if you will, to us. We've all had our down moments. We've been saying that this last 9 weeks has been the longest 9 months of our life, if you will. But we're here with you, and I just want to say I'm going to turn over to Candace now to tell you how to find us. But just thank you for coming today, just from me, and be strong.
Yes, thank you for spending this time with us. So first, we'd love to connect with you over cocktail via Zoom. If you have any thoughts or ideas or anything specific to your market, we'd love to hear from you. So please feel free to reach out. We also, we have on our insights page, you can download this presentation. We also have a link to our, on the Carbonate, this is on the Carbonate website, there's a link to our resource center where AFCO and Carbonate together have created a number of thought capital pieces. We also have some thoughts about, different opening activities and support that we're able to provide as well that you can click to on there. And please reach out to us via at AFCO, at AF&Co, or at Carbonate Group with any questions or thoughts. We'd love to hear from you. We're in it with you.
And just on a side note, we can hang on if anybody wants to hang on. We know there was some questions. So Candace and I are happy to hang on. If you want to hang on and you ask the question, we can answer it. I also do want to say, please support Save Restaurants, hashtag Save Restaurants. And in San Francisco specifically, hashtag GGRA Restaurants Rising. Make sure you're involved with your state associations, and also support my hero, Jose Andres. So I had to get that in, but we can stay on for a little while if you ask the question and you want to hang with us. So Candace, do we have any questions that we want to address?
I'm just looking, there was let's see, we have a question here about what do we think about the recent Chuck E. Cheese story came out where they completely rebranded the delivery portion of the business as a totally different company. That's a really interesting one. I'm not totally familiar with how they rebranded the delivery. I've read a lot. I mean, concepts like Chuck E. Cheese that are really connected to a lot of, gaming and, touching of different devices and things. That's going to be tricky, I think, as they look through some of those. It's interesting to see brands really relaunching something totally new. And it's an opportunity. I think that's one of the things we're seeing is that, the opportunity to try something new and see if it sticks is there right now. We've got, and I think that's where we've seen some of the creativity that's come to play is because there's sort of like, a little bit of a, freedom to fail, if you will, is what creates, the opportunity to take some risks. And we're already in such a position that, there's in some respects, if you can test something new and try it, go for it now.
Absolutely. Not a lot to lose right now.
Yeah, but there's opportunities, for a brand, like a Chuck E. Cheese that has some legacy to it that, to take what people love about it and spin it into something else. And I think we've seen that with a lot of other examples too. Let's see what other questions we have. This is one, Andrew. I don't know if you want to speak to this one.
Sure.
Can you talk about the financial difficulties with rents for hotels and restaurants and how we can really move forward with those circumstances?
So there's a lot of bills going on right now with, with the government, and please, this is the time to be politically active, if you want to save your restaurants. So there's a bill called SB 939. You can look that up, and basically, your state associations, your restaurant associations, your hotel associations, everybody is, I'm not going to say fighting the good fight, because there's been a lot of wonderful landlords that are in it with the, the hotels and restaurants, but there's a lot of others that aren't. And I think partially, number one, looking for any additional aid that you can get, to help cover some of those costs. And then really working with your landlords, to let them know that, the likelihood of somebody moving into your space right now is really low. So they're going to be motivated to want to try to keep you there. The hotel world is, a lot more difficult to navigate, if you will, because, there's, people have to come to stay with you, and that's where your revenue is going to come. But I would say I've heard amazing stories of landlords that are just truly, genuinely trying to make this all work. So I say start with trying to say we're in it together, figuring out if it's a percentage or deferred or whatever you can do. And then if that doesn't work, look at state aid. And then, sadly, you might have to get, a legal piece of it involved, because if you just don't have the money, you can't pay the rent. And so, start to look for new locations that are going to be a lot more, cost effective for you.
Yeah. Just looking to see, I think we answered many of these questions over the course. A couple people want to have us for happy hour, Andrew. That's exciting.
Oh, great. We're happy to have happy hour. We could do it right now. Let's have a cocktail. Okay.
It's a little early, but who's judging, not me.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I think we've answered most of them.
Okay.
But please, if anybody thinks of anything else, please feel free to reach out. We love hearing from you.
Yeah, and just remember, there is a light at the end of the old brick road. I'll wrap with a theme, and and that we're gonna all return to Oz at some point. It's just gonna take a little longer. So I'll say thanks to Candace, who inspires me daily, and thank you to our amazing teams back at the home offices, which are all virtual now. And thanks to all of you for joining us today. And we'll see you soon, we hope, in a restaurant where we can hug each other. Okay. Have a great day.
Cheers.
Bye.
Thanks.